Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful in the studio today. We are finally going to tackle the back of my journal. So if you have been watching and following along on this journey, and maybe you watched the video that I posted yesterday where I did a little sneak peek, kind of an overview of the whole journal, and then a sneak peek of what we're going to do today for a tutorial. So if you are just joining me for the very first time, welcome. I hope if you enjoyed this video that you'll give me a thumbs up and hit subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. I've been working on a series. This is going to be number 12, I think, part 12. And it's going to be a long one. Hopefully it's going to speed up here after this one that took a while. But I had given myself a challenge to work with only recycled book pages to do all of my decorative elements in my journal. And that's why it's taking a while, because I need to alter the paper, try to think up different ways to do that, and use them in this stacked envelope junk journal. So if you are brand new to my channel, I'm going to put in the description a link to the video from yesterday, which is an overview of this whole thing, so I won't go into it in depth today. I'm just going to work on a tutorial. So I'll put a link to the entire series and specifically to the video I did yesterday. That way you can get kind of an overview of the whole thing that I've been working on. And I kind of do my channel in playlists because most of the projects I do are kind of an ongoing thing, doing a whole journal. So I try to organize them that way so that you can easily find the ones that you're looking for. So with that said, we are going to jump to the back of my journal, which started out as a file folder. And if you have been watching this from the beginning, you know that my file folder opened from this side. And I actually, once I came up with this idea to do my folder to look like a carpet bag, I needed a different direction for my folder. So I ended up ripping off the one that I had started. So this is how it went before, with pockets at the top. And that wasn't going to work. I needed my pockets to go along this longer edge. So I ripped this off and started over. So that's what we're going to do today. Now I'm going to try to do this video without actually crafting through this whole thing, because I don't want it to get too long. So I've prepared myself ahead with all the parts and pieces that I need. In fact, I even did a list that I can maybe put this online also so that you can just grab it for reference. And then I'm thinking I might even do some of the pattern pieces so that you can grab those also. So I had a few comments since I've been doing this project, and I just want to say I'm hoping it's not too complicated. I'm a beginner, so I kind of figure if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I try to break it down into each part as a different video and break it down into steps that are easy to understand. So if you have any questions at all, if I've been unclear about something, please ask me, because I'm completely willing to revisit a certain thing if I wasn't clear the first time. So please don't be intimidated by any of this. This really, even though it looks complicated, I broke it down into steps, and it's really not that much. So I hope you'll try it. Now, I do have to say that making my leather paper, the one thing I'm finding that's driving me a little crazy is, because I've used book page, the more I handle this, little parts will crack. The more that the fake leather dries, and over time it becomes a little more brittle. So it looks like old cracked leather. If that's your look and that's fine, then it won't maybe bother you. And I don't mind it looking like old leather, but the one thing I've been doing as I go along is taking my inking and just going back over those white spots just to make them not stand out so much. So you can do that. I've also learned a couple of things about making certain parts that need to be more flexible because they're going to be opened and closed, like these belt parts. I've added, in addition to my 2 layers of leather, a piece of scrim in between so that it has some kind of fabric to hold it together. And I'm going to show you why. And this is just kind of a side note in case you've been following along. You know, I'm making my leather just out of book page, and it has some flexibility when it's fresh, but like I said, over time it just becomes more brittle and kind of breaks. So I noticed on faux leather fabric there is this backing, and it looks kind of like the scrim does to me. So I thought, well, that'll make it more durable. And so I've done that. Now I wanted to point out, in case you're not doing this book challenge with me where I'm using just recycled book page, this whole cover idea can translate with other materials too. So don't feel like if you're not doing this challenge that you can't use fabric or something else, because it would be easier, I think. And it would save you the step of having to make the leather. So this is just some embossed faux suede that would be nice. And I think I've had this for years because I used to do a lot of sewing and have saved all of my kind of go-to things. And I think I probably got this at like Walmart in their fabric department. Don't know if they still have it, but that's where I did get that. You might be able to find it online. That's one that would work. And then this is has more of that leather feel to it, but it's also kind of backed with kind of like the fabric that goes like under a chair. After you upholster it, you put that black screen kind of fabric on it. It's kind of similar to that. So these are both fabrics that could work in this project if you don't want to use your paper leather. And then also it would make these belt parts more durable. So I just wanted to give you that idea in case you don't want to deal with making your own leather. Okay, so for this this booklet, I'm going to show you. It kind of started out with I needed a place to hang my luggage tag, so I thought I would make this after my carpet bag that I have. So it looks kind of more like a briefcase or a purse or something, but that's because it's a book. And so I've even already thought of other ideas for making this a thicker book binding and still using this kind of whole buckle-y idea. So for mine, like I said, if you have watched, you know that I have an old carpet bag luggage piece that I love. And so because I was doing this travel inspired bohemian exotic kind of theme journal, I wanted to do the carpet bag on the back. So it's going to open up very gently here. And I did go ahead, if you did watch the last video, I said if I had this to do over again, I would put scrim in between the layers of this one, and I did. So it was a little bit more flexible, but you can see how your paper kind of cracks just by using it. So I just want to point that out in case you want to go and do this out of a different material. It'll be more durable. So really it kind of opens up like my carpet bag does with these two flaps. And then I've made mine kind of an accordion so that I can actually put, I'm going to make a thin, I think leather covered journal to put inside of this. And it might be like an art journal or something. I haven't decided yet. But it has these two file folder pockets still that I can just tuck things in if I want. So this is what we're going to make. Okay, so on my list I have, first thing you need is a file folder. So you're going to take just a plain recycled or new whatever file folder, and you're going to fold it in half. And I'm going to go ahead and do this part, and I'm folding it with this shorter side in. You could do it either way. It doesn't really matter because we're going to trim that anyway. I just want to fold it first because file folders, like everything else, are not going to be perfectly square. And before I start trimming it, I want to at least get my fold so that I use this as my perfect square line. And then I'm just going to trim this on this side. And then on this side, I want to trim it so that I don't have any of these curvy parts, so that I have a straight edge. So mine ended up, I'm not going to do this now, but I ended up with a file folder that measured about, once it's folded in half, it's about 8 inches this way and about 5.5 this way, which worked out pretty good for me because my book pages are a similar size that I'm using for my decorative paper. Now, if you're not doing this challenge again, you can use other kind of decorative papers, but I will show you what I did. So once I had my file folder trimmed the way that I needed it to be, I wanted to make these two pockets. So let me grab my other file folder. So if you imagine that this is trimmed off, this is where I need my notch to be and where I want my pockets. So what I did was I wanted to drop that edge, that front edge down a little bit lower than the back edge, and you'll see why later on, but that was kind of something I needed to do. So to do that, we're going to just pretend I've cut that off already. I'm going to fold it the other direction. And let's see. I want to cut, this is going to be my edge, so I want to cut a little notch. Where's my scissors? Like maybe 3/8 or 1/4 an inch, something like that, or 1/2 inch, whatever you want your drop down to be. So I'm just going to notch. Let's see. I have to think here again. One side. Okay, so I have a little notch here, and then it's going to go this way again. This is going to get confusing. So I think I should trim that for you, and then you'll understand. Let me do that. I think it'll make it easier without seeing all this. So let me go trim this real quick. Okay, I think that'll be better to see without all that other stuff. Okay, so I've cut my notches off now, so that's why that happened. Okay, so I want this edge and this edge to be shorter. So I'm gonna fold it the other direction. Make my notch. And then this is my inside. It has those 3 ribs on the paper. So I'm going to trim this edge. That's my inside edge. So I'm going to go over to my paper cutter again just because it'll be easier to trim that. Okay, so I've trimmed that away, okay? And then that's going to be my inside of my file folder. Okay, so now I want to make my little notch, and I want it to be about in the middle, and they can both be the same or not. So the easiest way to do that again is to fold it that other direction and use my 2-inch circle punch, and I'm just going to eyeball where I think the center is and make my notch. Okay, so now you see I have a notch. It's dropped down from the edge. And then I can go ahead and before I do any kind of stitching or gluing or anything, you want to ink up everything, inside and outside, anything that might show. So do your little distress inking. I used Distress Oxide in Vintage Photo is what I usually use. So I've done that already. And then you go and you can either glue this or stitch it just along the edge so that now you have your 2 pockets, okay? So that's all I need to do with this for right now. So that's just my booklet part. Okay, so to do the decorative part, you're gonna need 3 book pages of leather. So I've made a few of those ahead of time, and just a single layer. If you watched on my video of how to make the faux leather and then where I used it with the luggage tag, sometimes you want it thicker, but I start out with just a single layer, and then I'll show you each piece, which ones you need to double up and that kind of thing. So 3 pieces of leather, make that ahead. And then for the decorative cover part, you want to, mine's going to open this way. So my stacked envelopes are going to be on this part. Again, if you just want to use this as a book on its own and you won't be adding anything there, I'm just going to do it as if I'm doing it with the stacked envelope, because that's what I did. So this is the part that you're going to see. This is the decorative that would be the very back part of your book cover. So for mine, because I was doing it to look like a carpet bag, and my carpet bag has kind of a striped looking rug pattern, I wanted to use my mixed media papers and kind of create that same effect. So I just did my mixed media papers, and let me see if I can find one with a border on it. So I would just do my mixed media papers, and then I was taking stencils that had kind of a geometric stripe border and just kind of painted those. I did mine all in gold, in just a metallic pen. And then I could cut those strips. In fact, I could cut this in half so it's not this wide, and it gives it the pattern a different look. So I did a bunch of those so that I had different stripes. I'll show you the book again, how it ended up. So each piece of this is cut from one of those different stripe patterns, and then I have the same for the top. So this would have taken me, because of the number I did, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different book sheet, different of these kind of things cut. So that probably amounted to maybe 2 book pages, something like that. You could also do this with just a solid piece. If you're not making your own paper, just a solid piece of decorative cardstock would work. Anything, fabric, a piece of fabric, whatever you want to do. So you're going to measure your cover just one side, and mine ended up to be about 8 inches, again, like I said, by 5.5-ish. You're going to make whatever that decorative thing is, okay? So you're going to have a piece for here and then a piece for one of the flaps. Once you've done that, you also want, I put a piece of leather trim along the top, just here, and that's about 1/4 inch. So from one of your 3 pieces or scrap that you may have, if you've been doing it for other things, you're just going to get one little thin scrap of your leather. And you're going to take whatever book page, and I think I have one cut. This is the size that I need. Oh, I should point this out. If you are going to do the book page challenge idea like I did, and stripe your fabric onto here, your paper, you need a backing for that. And my book page wasn't quite as the 5.5 inches wide. So I actually took 2 pieces of book page, and I just with a glue stick overlapped them again to make it bigger, and then trimmed it to the size that I needed. So that's going to fit there. And this would be my base that I would then glue my different stripes on. So if you want to do that, you can make this be a collage of some kind, whatever you want. But anytime you're not going to do one solid piece of paper, decorative paper, then you're going to need some kind of backing to mount it on. So I put all my stripes, glued them down, and then I went to my sewing machine. I had thought I might do some slow stitching on it, but because this was such a busy pattern already, I wanted to kind of not fussy it up too much. So I just went to my sewing machine, and I don't know if you can see, I just alternated 2 different, a zigzag and then kind of a little different decorative zigzag stitch, and just alternated those. That kind of helped keep my, because I'm just working with book page and it's thin, it kind of kept that more durable too. So I just did that, sewed those together. And you can see up here, I did the same thing on this piece. It was just started out as a big piece, but you can see my decorative stitching on the back through the scrim. So you want to do that, get your decorative part ready. And then you're going to take, imagine that this is my decorative piece. You're going to take and glue down your 1 strip of decorative leather for the trim. You're going to glue that down, and then I double stitched mine just to make it look really like luggage. Instead of just one stitch, I did 2. I don't know if you can see that. So just do that, stitch it down while it's just on your backing paper. Okay, then the next thing you want to do is make the flaps. Okay, so this is going to be glued to here. We're going to imagine that. And I'll clip those together just so we have them. Okay, so we're going to use that later. Put that somewhere out of my way. Okay, now we need to make our flaps. So I need two. I need the leather flap and I need the decorative paper flap. So for my leather flap, I decided to make it the same width as my folder, which is in my case 8 inches. And then I made it 3 inches this way. And that was just me eyeballing kind of proportion. I'm gonna have this needs some fold over for my back of my folder. It's gonna come over like this. So I probably am gonna end up with 2 and 3, whatever I end up with hanging over for my flap. Okay, so that's just one piece of leather. And then I did go ahead and I put a piece of scrim. I use this all the time. It's just this fabric that has kind of a tight weave, but it's really thin, so it's kind of gauzy, a little sturdier than gauze, a little sturdier than cheesecloth, depending on where you are and where you get your cheesecloth. My kitchen cheesecloth is more open weave than this, so this is to me actually a little bit sturdier. So I use this all the time, but I just basically take your 8-inch by 3-inch strip, and then I went ahead and I rounded those corners first, just the ones that are going to show. These are going to get sewn into the back, and I used my larger corner, which is 10 millimeter, to get this rounded edge. So you do that just on these 2 edges, and then I just used my Mod Podge and painted it onto the back side of my leather, and just stick it on and use my brayer, roll back and forth to till it kind of sticks down, and then you can take it and trim around the edge. It's easier to trim this after the glue has dried, so you'll want to do that. And then you can either leave it so that you just see the scrim through the book page, or the book page through the scrim, but I had some paint kind of on mine, so I wanted to kind of hide that. So I just put another decorative piece of book page on the back. This could be, in this case, I used a piece of my mixed media page. So this is going to be your first flap. You will see the underside, so just be aware of that. You're going to have everything then trimmed to one piece. And then I didn't do it on this one yet, but you'll go ahead and use your sewing machine and just double stitch around the edge so that it has a finished look. Now, if you don't do paper sewing on your sewing machine, or you're afraid to, or you don't really sew, you're gonna find if you do this paper craft stuff, a lot of times that you want to do stitching. So I would maybe not use your good sewing machine, but I went to Walmart and just got the cheapest sewing machine I could find that just does a zigzag stitch, a couple other stitches, and that's what I use for my paper craft. So, it might be something you want to invest in, and it's going to be maybe right around $100, maybe a little less. So you'll want to do that. Now, I have this flap. Now I need my other decorative flap. So for that one, I decided, just for scale, looking at my carpet bag, that I wanted to make it 1 inch smaller on either side, but 1 inch longer than the leather. So in my case, that meant I needed to do a 4 by 6 or 4 by 6 inch piece of decorative paper. Okay, so it's 4 inches and then 6 inches wide. Okay, so I did that out of my decorative. Again, you could do it out of anything. I've made a pattern out of my book page. So I started out with my 4 by 6, and then I just took a ruler, and this sewing ruler worked out very well because, unlike these kind of rulers, a regular ruler has an offset so the beginning of my 1 inch is here, but it doesn't go all the way to the edge. This is a sewing, like a quilter's ruler, and 1 inch is from the edge. So this kind of ruler is easy to use for this. So I just kind of went and found where my 1 inch was, and then just cut 2 corners out. So I'll do that real quick. And again, this is, at this point, it's just your single layer. Now in my case, I had glued my strips to make my stripe pattern, and then I had stitched. So that's why you see those stitches on the inside of that flap, which I actually kind of like. I want to sometimes in this journal have references to the fact that I'm using only book page. Sometimes I hide it, but you know, certain places I like it to peek through. Okay, so you have your basic shape, and I think for these 2 pieces, I'll go ahead maybe and do a template that you can print out. I haven't done it yet, but I think I will do that. And then that way, if you don't have the corner punches and all that kind of stuff, you can just cut this out. You may need to, depending on the size of your file folder, either cut it to fit exactly these template pieces or adjust the template pieces to fit your file folder, either way. Okay, so I have this squared off thing, but now I want to get my rounded corners, and my corner punch won't fit correctly because of the 1 inch. So to do that, I just folded in gently. Where's my big one here? So that I could get my corner punch all the way to the corner. And I try not to crease that. You can go back and iron it possibly to, you know, once you glue it down to something else, to your other layer, you'll get rid of any creases that you've made. So I've done that. Now I need to go this other direction so that I can get my punch to fit this way. Oops. Okay, so that's your pattern. Now I'm pretending that this is my decorative piece because for sake of this demo. So I have my decorative piece. It has stitching on it, and I want it to be a little bit more durable than this too. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue it to my scrim again so that I can have it kind of look cleaned up. And then you saw that through here. So I added the scrim and my decorative book page. Okay, glue those 2 pieces together. Now I want to make this little trim leather piece. And when you sew, you would make like seam binding or something like that. Well, with paper, that's not going to work as easy because it's not going to want to bend around, and it was going to take too much time. So the easy way to do that is to use your decorative cover you've made as a template, and then go to a new piece of leather, which is, and now set it all aside here somewhere. You'll take it to a full piece. I don't have one sitting here, but and use that as a template and cut out a leather one. Okay, so on this leather one, I've already then made my next step, which is to take my ruler. And again, at this point, I don't have anything else. It's just 1 layer of leather. And I'm gonna just find a mark. I tend to use these. You could use this sewing ruler, has like a 1/4 inch. You see where a 1/4 inch is. You would just, if you don't have this ruler, I even use this one. And the lines that go this way, you see how there's some kind of all on a row. You can eyeball that to your edge. You see how I did that, and kind of get your 1/4 inch. So either way, either kind of ruler that you have. I've gone ahead and already done this one. I just took a pen and I just kind of made my pattern. I don't need to worry about this edge because this is what's going to get sewn into my book. Okay, so it's just, I just want trim around these edges. So at this point, then I can just take my scissors and follow that line. Now, obviously, I had to eyeball just round the corners myself. Okay, you'll just finish cutting that. So that's going to make my trim that's going to go around my decorative piece, just like that. So then you want to glue that down to your decorative piece and get rid of all this. Glue that down and it will look like this, okay? And then you can go ahead and stitch your double stitching around the edge. Again, you don't, that back edge is gonna get glued in, so you don't have to really worry about that. But I would go ahead and ink all of those edges too. You know, I have kind of, it goes without saying, every time you do a new piece, I ink all the edges. Okay, so now your flaps are ready and your front cover is done. And let's see, at this point, I've made that, and I think you can go ahead, if I didn't already say this, once you have attached this trim to this decorative piece, you can actually go ahead and glue this whole cover to your file folder. So I kind of skipped that step, but I do have it on my list. So once I had made this and stitched it, glue it to the cover because you don't need to do anything else there, okay? Then I made my flaps. So I'm gonna have one go here, and then I have my decorative one with the trim that's gonna go here, okay? So those pieces are all ready to go. And we're just gonna imagine that I've glued them on. Once you have these two pieces, where you have your trim on and you've stitched around it, and this is done and stitched around, once I had stitched this, I went ahead and added a piece of scrim to this just to kind of hide all my junk. And I actually think I did it before. You can see I did my stitching on my trim afterwards. So whatever order, I think in the instructions I put it the order that I did this. So you have those pieces ready to go. So you can go ahead also, and we have dropped down this edge, and now you understand why, because I need to attach this and then this one over the top of it. And I think I actually took these and kind of centered them beforehand. We're gonna take this off just so it doesn't confuse you. Kind of centered them and went ahead and stitched that along so it's connected. And then just take both of those and glue them so that they have like a 1/4 inch overhang, just so you have it captured by the back side of your book. And then you can take and stitch that too, and so it's going to be more durable, since that is going to be your flap that's going to open and close. Even though it's going to be tucked behind some envelopes, you still want it to be nice and durable. So on mine, you can see where I stitched it several times, okay? So it's all hidden in there. You don't see it from this back side, but it's attached really good. So you do that. And then I need to work on these accordion sides, okay? So to do the accordion sides, I was able to get mine out of one book page. Okay, I just cut one piece of book page in half. These don't look like they came from the same one. I think this one didn't. Oh, here it is. Okay, so I've already folded one. So I had one piece of book page. And for me to determine my size, just because I was limited to the size of my book page, even if it wasn't going to fit here exactly, I didn't care. I just wanted to try to get away with using one piece. So I just cut my book page in half this way, okay? And then you want to take, and I've already done it on this one, you take about 1/4 inch, because that was the trim width that we used on each end, okay? So once I have those two folds, then I'm going to fold it in half inside on itself. Okay, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So when I did the book page cut in half, I attached a piece of scrim to the back, because I need that durability, because again, it's going to function and be moving. And if this is just paper, it's just going to tear up here. So adding the scrim is just going to kind of keep it. You can already see I've got a little piece there, but then I just glued it down again. So you want to add the scrim. So I'll show you, I just eyeball this. It doesn't have to be exact. So I'm just gonna roll over what I think is 1/4 of an inch. And to make it easy on myself and not have to be exact, I'm gonna go ahead and do this other side. And it's okay, I would take whatever side is closest to the 1/4 inch and have that be your front, because the back side is gonna be buried into your file folder thing. So once I take that, then I'm just gonna fold it in on itself. And you can see what I mean. This paper has been sitting a day. When it was more flexible, this was all easier to do when it was fresh and I had just made it. But you can see how this happens. So in this case, I take my fine line applicator and I just put a little more glue there and some ink and kind of hide that. The other thing that you can do is if your paper's been sitting around for a few days before you do this, is you can take your heat gun and just kind of go over this, and it'll soften it up because there's Mod Podge on here. So it just kind of softens it up and makes it more flexible. So I would recommend doing that if your paper has been sitting around and isn't freshly made, because once you get your form made, later on, it's at least already in its shape, and so you're maybe not going to have to be handling it as much, and you won't have that little cracking happening so often. So I've gone on itself this way in half, and then I'm going to go back the other way in half again. So you're just making a little kind of a fan shape. Okay, and I have 2 of those. So you can see why I get frustrated doing this. So it's just going to look like a worn book. Okay, so now we have our cover. This is glued on. Imagine that. And now that 1/4 inch that I folded over is going to give me my other piece of side trim. And you want to do this before you have anything else attached. You want it to be loose, because now I can take this and I can go to my sewing machine and sew this in. I glued it first, and when I glued it and sewed it, I just wrapped it around the front and the back of that. You can glue it and then use some clamps, you know, let it dry for a couple of minutes and then go and stitch that. So I did that double stitch. So now I have my decorative cover, this, and then I'll do the other side, same thing. I'll have that attached. And now all I need to do is attach these back pieces. And you can't really get in there with your sewing machine because of the shape it's gonna make. So what I found is if you do the front first, you can get it into your sewing machine like this, okay? And then when I go to put the back on, I don't really care because it's gonna be buried under my envelope portion of my junk journal, okay? If you were to do this as a standalone book cover and not have, or you know, like an expanding file sort of deal, you're going to be putting a decorative piece here too. So that would maybe change. What I would do in that case is before I attach this and sew it to the front, I want at least for it to look like it's been stitched. So I would run my double stitching through my sewing machine on this, on one side, and then do it attaching it to my book on this side. That way, when you go to glue this back side, it looks like it's stitched already. And in that case, you would want your decorative cover already on here before you add this. And then it'll look like the front and the back look the same. So that's just if you're gonna kind of do this in a different way. So let me just clip that on there. Okay, so now we have that attached. Let me grab my other one here. So at this point, everything's attached now, right? And if you want to do this luggage tag, this is optional. Maybe you just want it to look like this with no luggage tag. But at that point, you'll want to add just another little, a little strap here with a little D-ring on it. You can buy D-rings in the hardware store. I made mine because I've made my buckle and all that stuff. So I'll show you how I did that and how I do the buckle again. I've demonstrated this buckle before in this demo, but I'll do it again in case this is your first one you're watching in this series and want to know how to do that. So that would be another little piece you'll add. I'll show you that in a second when I do the middle stuff. But then you need to make this clasp, okay? And then we're home free here. We're almost finished. So to do that, I went ahead and just made a template. And again, like I said, I'll try to put these where you can print them out and cut them out yourself, or you can make your own. It doesn't matter. But these ended up being my little pattern pieces for my buckle, okay? So you need these 3 little pieces. So I just took my leather, I think this is what I had left over from actually doing these, I like to cut all these pieces from the same book page so that way they match, okay? So I just took and cut my strips close to the size I needed, and here's one you can actually see. So I figured out how much I needed. I cut my 2 strips, and I went ahead and glued those together with a piece of scrim in between. So I have a double-sided leather thing with this extra durability inside. And I just use my Mod Podge to do that. You can use Collage Podge, whatever you use to glue, whatever kind of medium you use. So glued that together, and then I just traced it out, including the little holes, and cut that out. So I had my pieces. So I have one here. And it had already been glued together. So then all I had to do was punch my little holes here for my my little eyelets, and I just used my 3mm hole punch those, and then you've seen me do this before with the little eyelet setter. I don't have a crocodile, so I just use this little eyelet setter. So you're going to add those. This is the back side, and then ink everything up. I stitched around the edge. I would stitch around the edge before you put these eyelets in, just because this might interfere with your machine foot, your sewing foot. So do the stitching first, then put those on. Same with this piece. Cut 2 of those out. I kind of made a mess up here with my sewing machine, and that's okay because you're not going to see it. It's going to get hidden. To do this part, it's kind of similar to what I did in the attaching a belt. You fold this over, and I've actually put a mark and holes where you would fold this, but you fold this over, and then you make 2 punches with your 4mm punch, one on the very edge where it catches both sides, and then one a little further in, and it'll give you that kind of elongated hole. And that's where our buckle is going to attach. So I didn't glue this yet because I want to show you again how to put that buckle on. And then you need this little piece. This one in this case is going to slide right over this. And I actually glued it in the end. Once I have my buckle in, I can sew this on my machine across here. And then this is going to kind of cover that stitching. And you can glue it all to the back side because this is all going to get glued down to your cover. Okay, so that's where our buckle will go, but I've already done my stitching. So you prep those ahead too, those pieces. For this piece, again, I did 2 layers of my leather, 2 pieces like this, and I don't fold it over. I don't do a wider one and then fold it in half. I actually cut the pieces because whenever you fold this, you get that kind of crack in here. So you're better off just to go ahead and cut your strips, glue them together. And for these 2 pieces, I just glued my 2 pieces of leather together. I did not put any scrim in between because these 2 are not going to get the wear and tear that this belt buckle part is, okay? Even with putting the scrim in, just the more you kind of play with this and go in and out, you do get little cracks, and that's why the scrim inside there was a good idea, because I could go ahead and touch these up with my inking, which kind of gets rid of the white, but it doesn't do anything for the strength, so you need that fabric inside. Okay, so let me do real quick here a buckle and the D-ring. Like I said, you can buy D-rings in the hardware store, but it might not be the size that you need. and this way mine can match each other. So let me get my little tools here that I need. So I'm just going to use some 16 gauge wire. For my D-ring on that one, I did it in actually 14 gauge wire. Either one will work. 16 is just a little easier because it's a little smaller of a wire. So first I will make the buckle, and I've shown that before. You can use just regular, these are similar to just regular pliers that you might have in your garage. They don't have to be jewelry ones. You just will use the flat inside kind of lower down on your plier. Okay, but I have these jewelry ones, so I'm just going to use this flat one. And I'm not even going to cut my wire yet because I don't know the size. So I'm going to make one bend so it looks like an L. Okay, and then I'm going to make another bend so it looks kind of like a J. And then I'm going to measure, I need it to go around my buckle. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball. That's where I will make my next bend. Okay, now it looks like that. And now I just want to check it, make sure it's going to fit. Okay. And now I can make my last bend. And these are hand done, so if they're a little wonky, just looks more handmade. Okay, so I can see now where I need to cut for my size here. So I'm just gonna, you don't see this part, so if your cut is not beautiful, that's okay. I need to trim a little bit more. And you have to watch because that just went flying across the room. But I'm used to it. I use a little Dyson vacuum kind of thing and sweep everything up. Okay, so it's kind of wonky this way. So I'm going to take my steel block and a hammer. And I don't think I have my decorative hammer here, which I don't really need. You can use a big heavy one. This is the one I just used for my rivets. Just kind of get that flattened out. This is a really heavy hammer. Or you can use a little decorative ball one, which I've used in the other video. I'm a little froggy again today. I'm back home and my allergies have to adjust. And anytime there's a storm, it blows in more junk I don't like. Okay, so you have that part of your buckle. And then I just need a little round nose plier to make the little long part. So I'm just going to make this as tiny as I can with this heavy wire. So you're just going to make a little loop like that. And then I don't know how long it needs to be. So I'm going to actually open this up. I can just do it with my fingers and put this on. Let's see, first I'm going to go back and bend the other way. So I have this loop. I'm going to take my plier and I'm going to bend it back a little bit so it looks more like that little latch of a buckle. And then I'm going to put it on here so I can kind of see the length I need. So I want it a little bit longer than this dimension so that it grabs. So I cut these a little bit long and then I trim if I have to, but better too long than too short. So I'll just cut that off. Okay, and then at this point I can actually even close this up so it doesn't fall off. Okay, so buckles kind of have a top side and a bottom side because of this little angle I made there. So this is going to be my top side. And they usually have a little spot where they cradle the buckle. So to do that, I actually just either use this is kind of harder, or just grab a piece of my wire that I haven't cut and try to hit that. This is harder to do. If you have a piece of longer wire, it's easier. So I kind of just This is my top side. Let's see, yep. I just kind of lay a piece of wire over that. And hammer it, and then it's gonna make a little cradle for this little part. Okay. And I'm going to take my hammer because I want it to look like a real buckle and not a piece of wire. I'm going to flatten that a little bit more. Let's see. This hammer is a little heavy. I'm going to grab my other one. That hammer is not really meant to do this. This one is. The other one is really heavy for really forging metal. So when you want to do decorative things, this is better. Okay, you can see, or can you see? I flattened that out a little bit. And then that little edge, I can either trim a little bit off so it's not jaggedy, or sand that, file it, whatever you need to do. And then I like to actually take that little tiny end and bend it, bend it downward just a little bit so that it kind of lays on that cradle nicer. I don't know if you can see that. There you go. So that looks like a buckle, a handmade buckle. Okay. And then the next thing I would do with that is I would put it in my liver of sulfur just to get it kind of aged. You don't have to do that. It'll age on its own. But I like to do that to kind of give it that little kind of grungier look. And if you put too much, you can polish it back. But I kind of did that. And then for the D-ring part, I'm going to grab a mandrel. This is a ring mandrel. I just want to get this little rounded bit. Actually, this one's kind of big. I think I have a bracelet one that's smaller. Yeah, the end's a little smaller. So I'm going to use this. You can use this tool, anything that you can wrap wire around. So I'm just going to grab an end, and I'm just going to make kind of like a little U shape. And get rid of that big heavy thing. Okay, and then I left a little here because I want to bend that over to make it that D-ring shape. Actually, I did that too much. Probably not even in the frame to do this, but I made this way too long. And then again, I'm going to go the other way. And this one's pretty wonky, but you get the gist. I'm going to put it back on here again, just to, maybe not, this is smaller. So you kind of just want it rounded on one side and flat on the other side. That makes it kind of a D-ring shape. I'm doing a very poor job on this one, but I think you get the idea. So it's rounded on one side and then flat on the other side. So that way when you put a belt through it, and I don't have a piece here to even show you. Let's see, I need a scrap. We'll just use this as a scrap. So this doesn't really fit. So you have to make whatever little strip you're doing. Let's see, I'll grab this. This is actually gonna be too small, but whatever width you want that little tab, leather tab to be when you do your it's going to kind of go like that. You get the idea. So this needs to be a little bit wider, or this needs to be narrower. So just a little D-ring. That's what I did to attach this little guy. And I did the same thing. I just hammered that so that it's a little flat so it doesn't just look like wire. Okay, so that was that part. Now to put the buckle on, imagine that I've aged that already. And I need to put it onto this part. So I'm going to take that off, open that up. Okay, and again, there's a top and a bottom. So I want it to go this way. So I need this to go through here, but I need that little toggle part, I don't know what you call that, to go through that hole at the same time. Just like that, okay? So the trick then is for this to fit over that, and it doesn't. So can I squeeze it in there? Okay, I can't, so I need to put that on first. That's the tricky part. So actually, it probably would be easier if I had not glued this yet. I think that's what I needed to do. We'll try again. If you glue this afterwards, because there's no sewing, you're just gluing it, it might be easier to do it after you put the buckle on. But we're going to try this anyway. I think I could do it. Where there's a will, there's a way. Okay. So on this side, it's a catch-22 because now I need to sew that. So you do. Okay, I'm going to back up. You have to not glue this yet. Do that last. I'm going to just rip it off here. Totally destroy it. So you want to put this on. I know I'm botching this. So sorry if I've totally confused you at this point. You want to make this part, make the buckle, put that on, go sew that with your sewing machine, and then imagine that I had not already glued this little guy. Okay, it's a strip. Then you want to put this on to cover all that up, just like that. And you can glue this whole thing because it's going to be attached to your book cover, just like this one. So the only part that's loose is the buckle. Okay, so then the next thing you do is you have to attach this all to your book. So I'm not going to do this. We're just going to pretend. Put it into the one that you think you're going to need to use. So you could either go to the top one because that's the smallest it's going to be. If you fill it full of stuff, it's going to need to expand. So I would either choose the last one or the third one for your size. Okay. And I found that it's easier to get this through if you're using the third one, but that's on the fourth one. Okay, so now I know how big this needs to be, and then I can just attach it where I need to my book. Okay, so once you have that kind of laid out, you just put some glue on there. Now for that glue, you do want something sturdy because it's not sewn on at all. I thought about sewing it on before I glued my book cover all together, but the order didn't seem right as far as getting everything to fit right for this size. So I found it was easier to do it after. So I just used some mixed media adhesive. So it's kind of, you know, this clear, if you haven't used it, it's kind of like rubber cement-y kind of glue. I used that, and it's very strong. So that just gets attached to the front, and that is it. I mean, I probably made it sounded harder than it was. When I did my little list here, it is 18 steps that I probably could have combined some. So it's really not too bad. It's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 main pieces, 2 trim pieces, and your buckle. So it's not horrible. So I hope somebody tries it. Like I said, there's different ways. I'm already thinking to modify this, not putting in the accordion pieces and just having it be like a book cover that has this cute closure, you know, or even a wider spine kind of thing. So you'll come up with some even better ideas, I'm sure. But that is the project all done. And now I think I'm hoping that the rest of this kind of goes a little quicker. This part did take me a long time to figure out. I'm going to make, like I said, a book to go inside of this. And then I'm back onto my other parts. So I'm going to go to my list. I haven't decided what I'm doing next yet. That's a first. I probably won't sleep tonight now because I'll be trying to decide what goes in here. I do know that the color of this all came out a little darker and more fall color looking gemstone than how bright this is so far. So I'm going to have to incorporate all that so that my book looks cohesive to me. So I'm going to work on that. Now, I just have a little comment at the end, just because I always like to do some kind of little teaser thing for the people that watch it to the end. I often say that I am not an artist in that drawing kind of thing. And recently I've had people, oh, I'm going to try that, but they won't be very good or whatever. Don't be so hard on yourself. I mean, I am not an artist that knows how to draw, but I have to say that doing all my mixed media pages where I've been doodling on them, I started out with stencils. So do that to get yourself comfortable if that's something that you're not really comfortable with, like me. The other thing is I'm not very good at stenciling, so I found that using the stencils as like a template and drawing it is much neater than me trying to stencil and having it kind of blob everywhere, which I have found ways to use that too, but you can see I'm not very good at it. So don't judge yourself so harshly. Doing all that doodling kind of got me, I felt like I was doing adult coloring book things, and I have a few. This is probably one of my favorite ones. I haven't worked in it in a long time, but it's Jess, I don't know how to say her last name, Jess Meharry. She's wonderful. I just find her so inspirational. I love her jewelry and all her things, and I would say she's probably one of the most, as far as design-wise, that I just kind of, I just love that stuff. So, she does all this drawing, and yes, she's talented at it, but I think if you work in a coloring book or something like this, it'll kind of get you practiced for how you can make your own shapes and designs and not be so afraid of it. So working in a coloring book, it just kind of gets you doing those motions of, doodling and all that kind of thing. So I actually took some book page last night, and I thought, I've been doing the stenciling thing for a bit now. I'm feeling a little more confident. And so I took a picture off my phone that I can't show you because I'm using my phone to record. But it was a picture in Africa of this elephant. Of course, he didn't have a crown. But I found that if I have something to look at in real life and then just try to draw it out, you could even also take your photo, print it out, and use tracing paper to get the basic shape, or a light box or something like that. But I just used a pencil and freehanded and tried to do it in her kind of style, not being so hard on myself. And I like it. I think it kind of came out cute. I did some of my doodling. I didn't want to just color him in solid, so I did some of my silly doodling with a metallic pen and just kind of played. So don't be intimidated by anything, because like I said, I am not this type of artist, and I just think you have to get comfortable with yourself and not be afraid to try. I showed this to my husband, who is not really into any of these things that I do. So I know if he ever compliments me or shows any interest, then it's okay, because he's not one to do that. And I laughed because he said the same thing that I thought, was that, man, his trunk looks really long. But if you saw the picture of my real elephant, his trunk was actually even longer than this. It was crazy. And you don't think of that, because a lot of times you'll see them and they're curled up and whatever. But I just laughed because he made the same comment that I did about my art. The other thing that I have started trying to do too is some jelly plate. I have a jelly plate and I just never do anything with it. And so I thought I'm going to just play around with some book page and some stencils. This actually wasn't a stencil, it was kind of a stamp that had a real raised sort of pattern. I'd show it to you, but it's probably buried here somewhere. Oh, here it is. It was just this kind of thing. I don't even know where I got it, but you can see it's kind of has a good raised part. But I just thought I need to find some more ways to alter my book pages that I can use in my journal. That was another thing where I had a punch that's a butterfly, so it makes the butterfly look lacy. And I actually just laid it on there and rolled over it, and then used the jelly plate. But I bought some of these new metallic paints recently that I wanted to try. And I liked how they turned out. So some of this, you know, some turned out, some didn't, and I can cut them up or use them as backgrounds. So I guess I just wanted to show this as, even if you're just brand new at something, don't be afraid to try. So I hope that if you liked this video, I hope it wasn't too long, that you give me a thumbs up. And if you have any questions at all, I know I got a little crazy in there, a little sidetracked in part. So feel free to ask questions and I will answer them as soon as I can. Now, I am going to get back to this little guy and try to see what I can come up for the inside. So have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.